Hey everyone, welcome in. We're going to get started here in just a minute. While we're waiting on everyone to join us, please let us know in the chat where you're joining us from today. I'm Leah Houston. I'm a senior campaign specialist here at DBT Labs, and I am joining you from Portland, Oregon. So let us know in the chat where you're joining us from today. Oh, my kitty's going to join us too. Alrighty, thanks everyone for joining us for today's virtual event, 1DBT, Data Collaboration Built on Trust with DBT Explorer. Let's get going. Oh, you want to say hi, Ava? There she is. Alrighty, so today's episode is the third installment in our 1DBT series. It's our final episode. And today we're focused on how to use DBT Cloud and specifically DBT Explorer to build high quality data products that organizations can trust. Before this, we had our first episode of the series in November, and that was focused on 1DBT, the control plane for data collaboration at scale. And that included a DBT Copilot demo. You can watch that on demand in the link, the docs tab. There's a link for that on-demand webinar there. I'll also post it in the chat here in a minute. And then we also had the second installment in December. That one focused on accelerating data work with hybrid deployments and cross-platform DBT mesh. So I'll post a link to both of those once I'm done talking. And some housekeeping things. There's a Q&A tab. Please use that Q&A tab for all of your questions so we can keep those nice and organized. You can see that separate tab, like up where the chat is, the chat tab, docs, and then there's Q&A. We have the normal chat for whatever comments and banter about the presentation. And then the recording. I will email y'all the recording within 24 hours after today's event. So be on the lookout for that in your email inbox. And then a survey. I will post a survey near the end of today's session. Please take that survey for us. We would love to know your thoughts and how to improve our virtual events for y'all. And with that, I'm going to pass things over to today's presenters. So take it away, Alexis.
Thanks so much, Leah. I'm Alexis Jones. I'm a product marketing director here at DBT Labs, and I look after our DBT Cloud product marketing. In a few minutes, I'm going to be joined by my colleague, Roxy Dalkey. She is the product manager for DBT Explorer. Our agenda for today is threefold. So the first thing is I'm going to walk us through what we call 1DBT, which is really the theme for this webinar series. And I'll explain a little bit more about what we mean by that and how DBT Cloud is innovating in order to build towards this future. Then I'll pass it off to Roxy to talk about today's topic, which is all about data collaboration built on trust. She's going to talk a bit about the problem that we're out to solve by bringing data practitioners together with data stakeholders, and then the latest features to DBT Explorer that make this possible and also very delightful for users. Okay, so let's kick us off. Again, before we get into the details of DBT Explorer or even DBT Cloud, I think it's useful for us to talk about the future that we envision for DBT as a standard. Last year at Coalesce, we shared the vision for what it means for DBT to be the standard. And by standard, we mean the best and chosen framework for data transformation. Standardizing means that different teams aren't solving the same problems in slightly different ways. We can actually share solutions, align faster, and collaborate more seamlessly because we all speak the same language, the language of DBT. And that's regardless of your cloud provider, data platform, what team you sit on, or importantly, whether your team uses DBT Cloud or DBT Core. We call this vision 1DBT. Let me share a little bit more about this idea. So with 1DBT, a product team in Seattle can deploy and run DBT on AWS, while their colleagues in engineering over in Madrid run DBT on Azure. 1DBT operating in the cloud environment or environments that make the most sense for the business. A data science team running Databricks can directly reference a DBT project that the finance team manages over in Snowflake. Again, it's 1DBT running in different data platforms without the necessity to move or duplicate data. A central data team can build data models in a CLI using DBT Core, And those data models can then be investigated and built upon by a downstream marketing ops team that uses dbt Explorer and the new visual editing experience in dbt Cloud. One dbt that centralizes and disseminates knowledge from humans throughout the business. It's all just one dbt, one central platform enabling many user experiences. And if you've been following our content online since last summer, you've also probably seen this image and heard us talk about the ADLC, which is shorthand for the Analytics Development Lifecycle. It's our recommended and standardized approach for maturing analytics practices. And I will say that the ADLC is not owned by DBT Labs. It's not owned by any vendor. It's actually vendor agnostic, and it's a framework that's designed to help organizations of any size mature their analytics workflows. It encourages collaboration among various stakeholders and is designed to help data producers, data consumers, and ultimately the business ship and use trusted data products at speed and scale. The ADLC promotes 8 distinct workflow stages in the analytics development lifecycle, from planning analytics products to building, testing, and deploying them, to operating them in production and ensuring that they're reliable and discoverable. The ADLC borrows heavily from the SDLC, shorthand for the software development lifecycle, that was popularized in software engineering in the early 2000s, designed to help cross-functional teams work better together with more agility, velocity, and ultimately impact to the business. So in the SDLC, it meant that we are no longer bifurcating roles and responsibilities between software engineers who were building applications and the IT professionals who maintain the systems that those applications ran on, but rather we were giving them a standardized, repeatable framework by which to work better together. And it's high time for analytics professionals to adopt a similar framework and mode of working. And this time it's for data professionals and their downstream stakeholders. They should rely on vendors who will accelerate and harden data workflows for these groups across these stages. You're probably thinking that this sounds great, and where does DBT fit in? To which I say, excellent question. That's really where a data control plane comes in. So let me first explain what a data control plane is and then how it's connected to the ADLC. So at Coalesce last year, we unveiled the vision for DBT Cloud and how we're evolving beyond a data transformation tool to a multi-feature data control plane platform. We obviously got our start in data transformation, and we are committed to remaining the best and chosen standard for it. But in the past decade or so, since cloud data platforms and DBT were popularized, a bunch of workflows, and in turn, a bunch of vendor categories have sprung up around that core analytics workflow of data ingestion to data transformation to data analytics. And honestly, this is for a really good reason. As analytics became more accessible and widespread, and the directive to translate data into competitive edge became a strategic priority across boardrooms, there were more peripheral use cases to solve in that core data workflow. Things like, how can we automate these workflows from data source all the way through to data consumer? How can we get visibility into data pipeline performance and health, troubleshoot issues, and optimize velocity and costs in the process? How can we increase data literacy across the company and improve visibility and trust of data? And how do we build and centralize business logic to ensure that consistent, reliable metrics are powering all reaches of the business? And hence, this is why the modern data stack today looks like an eye chart, and there are a bunch of new categories that purpose-built tools are tackling. There are solutions for data orchestration, data observability, data catalogs, and semantic stores to address these market needs. But as it typically goes, when you solve a problem, you inadvertently introduce a new one. So while all this has been a great progress for the industry and our maturity, all of these add-on components to the data workflow ultimately create silos. Each of these components has a unique and siloed way of fitting into the analytics workflow. Each category creates subject-specific metadata that has really, really rich context about your analytics workstream, but there's no centralized way to connect it or take holistic action on it. With this metadata fragmented across tools, teams, and platforms, how can you know that you have the right governance and trust foundation across the board? How can you improve data quality, promote data literacy, and clarify data ownership when all of this context is siloed across teams, platforms, and tools? How can you be expected to mature and scale your analytics practice, thinking back to that ADLC workflow that we want to align towards, when data and teams are siloed? Ultimately, centralizing these metadata silos will be the make or break for your analytics workflow. We believe that the solution to all of this is a data control plane. A data control plane sits across your data stack, unifying capabilities for orchestration, observability, and more. Perhaps more important, a data control plane centralizes this metadata across the business, allowing you to get both a universal view of what's happening in your data estate, but also providing signals to help you understand if data is fresh, if your data platform is cost optimized, and if everyone is running from a common understanding of how business metrics are defined. And all of these workflows are supercharged with AI. So if you were studying those slides that I just popped up, you may have noticed that the data control plane categories on that top row look a lot like the stages of the ADLC, and that's not a coincidence. So while the ADLC is vendor agnostic and it is a process, a data control plane is a vendor-backed technology solution built to help users embrace various phases of the ADLC. Thinking back to that analog in the software engineering industry, the SDLC is a process, and vendors like GitHub, Atlassian, and Datadog offer solutions that help stakeholders at various interconnected stages of it. Same thing goes for ADLC. And dbt Cloud is a solution that's designed to help users embrace various stages of the ADLC at scale. It aligns teams with a common understanding of what's happening in their data estate. It works across various cloud and data platform environments, and it serves personas of varying technical backgrounds with a standardized, unified way to accelerate the analytics development lifecycle. This is what we're building towards. One platform to manage your data investments. Trusted, powered by data, multi-cloud, multi-persona, and supercharged with AI. Which brings us to today's event. So as we set out to define a data control plane, we also aligned on 3 defining characteristics of one. These aren't the feeds and speeds or capabilities included with your technology solution. So they're not, a semantic layer or a data catalog or orchestration capabilities, but more so a heuristic on what users should look for when evaluating various vendor solutions. A data control plane should support and promote these 3 things. The first is it should be flexible and cross-platform. And that's so that it can power distributed teams, help organizations avoid vendor lock-in, and manage data platform costs. The second is all about collaboration. So we just teed up the fact that silos are kind of an anti-pattern when it comes to accelerating and maturing analytics practices. So your data control plane has to make data development accessible, streamlined, and governed to more types of users, not just your core data engineering team. And then finally, kind of foundational to all of this is that it must produce trustworthy outputs. That means it can't be a black box. People need to understand where data comes from, how to improve it, how to troubleshoot it, and trust that the data that they're receiving is fresh and error-free. So this is really about ensuring high-quality data pipelines so that the business can actually take advantage of that data. I encourage you to go to our website. You can dive into the recording from our last OneDBT webinar that happened last month, where we covered that first pillar of flexible and cross-platform, talking through some of our new features that help organizations adopt Iceberg and cross-platform mesh. At our upcoming launch showcase in March, we'll dive deep into that middle collaborative pillar with some really exciting new platform features that make it possible and governed for more types of users to participate in the data development process. But today is all about that final and third pillar, which is trust. How dbt Cloud, and specifically our dbt data catalog, dbt Explorer, enables data collaboration built on trust. With rich metadata about your data pipelines, it's the best first place to build and share context on your data estate, troubleshoot issues, and optimize your data products. And speaking of really rich metadata that powers really awesome user experiences, I'd be remiss if I did not spend 60 seconds on this slide. So in case you missed it, a few weeks ago, we announced that DBT Labs has acquired SDF Labs. There's a lot of acronyms right there, or a lot of letters. This is a ton to share. We have a ton to share on the topic, and we're actually hosting a webinar between our CEO, Tristan Handy, and SDF CEO later this week. But we're really excited about the promising user experiences and business value that we'll be able to provide by integrating SDF's tech, which is SQL comprehension technology, and the corresponding metadata into our platform. Here I've listed off three of them that I'll go through real quick. So the first is faster performance, supercharging the DBT engine that you know and love to drastically minimize compile times and maximize dev efficiency in the order of your DBT commands running 50 to 100 times faster than they do today. The second is real-time code validation that allows teams to shift left and actually check on that code's accuracy as they're writing it. So not only does this mean avoiding unnecessary warehouse compute because you no longer have to materialize anything to validate that code, but you're also ensuring that you're delivering high quality data in the process. And then the third is a lot of really exciting implications to the metadata that DBT captures and the lineage that we provide to our users, and the ability to power nuanced and complex data governance use cases, for example, handling of PII and PHI data. So tons more to come on the topic. Definitely come join us at the webinar later this week. But for now, to the topic at hand, which is data collaboration built on trust with DBT Explorer. So without further ado, I'll pass it off to my colleague Roxy to get into the details. Roxy, over to you.
Thanks, Alexis. Hi, I'm Roxy Dalkey, a product manager here at DBT Labs, working on our metadata platform, which includes Explorer. Like Alexis mentioned, today we're talking about trust and collaboration. And we believe a large part of trust is aligning your different teams who have investments in data, the producers and the stakeholders of that data. And when we think about this from our perspective, we refer to it as two sides of the same challenge. Because typically the desired outcome for an organization is the same. But depending on who you are, the perspective is different. For example, on one side, we have developer Dante. He's a data producer, and he really wants to know how can he better understand, troubleshoot, and improve data quality of the pipelines so that he can effectively serve his stakeholders. And on the other side, we have consumer Kathy. She's a consumer of data, and she's really wondering how can she gather context, build trust in the data, and reuse it so she can make decisions quickly. Now, many of you that know DBT have come a long way with us on this journey. We've followed software engineering best practices to build transformation and harden data pipelines and code. And this has helped a lot. But even so, this doesn't necessarily mean that the quality of data is always easy to maintain and that the data is easier to understand and make decisions on, even with all of the great features that DBT has already. So we want to bridge this gap with DBT Explorer, which is the catalog for your DBT ecosystem. This can help not only your producers of data, but also your consumers of data. And the goal is really to help them discover existing assets, view lineage, be able to troubleshoot and optimize your pipelines, and in general, build knowledge and context about the data estate. We're obviously very excited about DBT Explorer, but don't take our word for it. We have some great customers who love our product and have great things to say about it. For example, the World Bank mentioned that this is an indispensable ally for any data-driven organization aiming for excellence. Additionally, Hazel Health said they always have DBT Explorer up and ready to answer questions about data, and it's a great time saver for them. And one reason we believe that this product is loved by our customers is that there's inherently a flywheel of value. Developers create useful, context-filled data assets for consumers. Consumers use and like what's created and ask for more, continue to make decisions on the data, and this flywheel just continues. Now that you have an understanding of DBT Explorer overall, let's talk about how DBT Explorer features can help with data collaboration built on a foundation of trust. Now, to trust something, you have to understand it. Let's take a quick analogy to cooking. You trust a recipe because you understand the ingredients, the cooking process, and the expected outcome. You might not know every chemical reaction, but you know the basics of heat, timing, and seasoning to trust what comes out of it. And for me, this analogy really only works for cooking because I still have not figured out baking. But anyways, one can apply the same analogy for data analytics. For an organization to foster a culture of data collaboration, all the people expected to collaborate around the data, the producers and consumers, need to understand where the data comes from, how it's used, and get signals to its quality. Teams also need a standardized way to troubleshoot problems and fine-tune the overall workflow. And that's where DBT Explorer comes in. Focusing in on this understanding box at the top here, DBT Explorer has many features that help foster this part of the process. Foundationally, every asset in the DBT estate has a resource page, which tells you a little bit about what the asset is, who owns it, what it includes, and of course, the lineage around the object. Features like auto exposures help you understand how your resource is being used downstream, specifically with BI tools. Features like model query history show you how frequently is an asset being consumed, so you can get a sense of how popular it is. And finally, our data health tiles and in-app trust signals really give users signals no matter where they are on if the asset's quality is good, and of course, whether it's usable. Like I said, we're going to go one level deeper into the features that help with the understanding part of this process. Let's first talk about resource pages in DBT Explorer. Resource pages are a foundational part of Explorer because every asset has a page, and this can be an important starting point when you're doing discovery. Whether it's a DBT model, a source, or a metric, here you can understand the contextual information about an asset, like what it means through its description. You can validate its health. We not only have overall health scores, which you can see at the top of the page here in the image, as well as specifics on quality and test results, which you can see in the middle. And most importantly, these resource pages also help you view a lineage around the asset, so you can see where the data comes from and in general, how it flows and its dependencies. One of our newer features, called auto exposures, integrates natively with your BI tools to add dashboards that are actually built off of your DBT models. And these are generated automatically and added to lineage. This is an incredibly valuable feature because you can see in what downstream assets the models you have are consumed in, which not only helps you improve assets that are high visibility, you don't want to break your CFO's dashboard, you want to make it better, but you can also identify things that maybe aren't consumed in any way downstream to remove them or find a different use for them. Auto exposures are currently supported for Tableau, and we are working on Power BI, which will be available soon. We actually have a beta program that will be starting soon that we'd love for participants to join. So provide instructions on requesting to be a part of that beta program at the end of the webinar. Continuing our theme of understanding, model query history is another important feature that helps with trust because it tells users how frequently models are being consumed. This is visible not only in the performance section of our interface, but also through lineage lenses, where we provided a heat map that actually allows you to zoom in and out on the hotspots. Similarly to auto exposures, this can not only help you understand what are your most popular assets, so you can continue to maintain them and make sure the quality is good, but it can also help you prune unused models and help save costs. Model query history is currently supported for BigQuery and Snowflake, and we're working on Redshift and Databricks next. Finally, to tie the story on understanding together, we have data health tiles and in-app trust signals. Now, data health tiles are tied to your exposures, since that's sort of the unit of how things are being consumed in dashboards and reports for your downstream assets. But These are incredibly useful because they're just iframes that you can embed directly into the dashboard where they're being consumed. So we're really meeting users where they are and signaling to them whether the asset is healthy. And of course, in the application, we also have high-level trust signals based on a number of factors like test status, freshness, and usability. So whether you're in application or outside, you'll be able to understand the relative health of the data you're looking at. We're going to show you some demos here, and we'll start here at the top on resource pages and go through the others afterwards. So here I am in DBT Explorer, and I can either search for a particular asset or find one here using this convenient left navigation. I'm going to go here, look at models, and zoom into transactions. As you can see, there's a number of pieces of information here that are useful, including a description, a quick overview on the health of the asset, which you can see exactly how that was calculated. And if I want to zoom in further on the run status through this view run button or test results, I can view that here as well. I can see not only the overall health, if I want to, I can also dig into the code of the model, as well as a few other things like columns, performance, and recommendations, which we'll go into a little bit more detail later. If I want to dig into additional metadata, I can also see that underneath here, as well as look at the relationships, like what it depends on and what it's referenced by. But of course, I can also more easily do that using this convenient lineage view, which allows me to zoom in on the lineage centered around this asset. So you can see the different models that feed into this, the model itself, as well as all the exposures that are connected to this. If I'm so inclined, I can actually zoom out and go to the full lineage, which I'll be able to see how this fits in across my entire project lineage. And that's a quick overview on the resource page, which is really the foundational starting point of where you might be when you're looking at an asset in DBT Explorer. Now let's talk about auto exposures. As noted, auto exposures automatically detect which dashboards are depending on the DBT models that you have. And this is a great way to understand how your assets are being used. Now in the product here, once you set up your Tableau integration directly in DBT Cloud, which you can do so in your account settings, you'll be able to see exposures populate here. And this happens automatically. You can see some basic information about these exposures, like that these are from Tableau, and most importantly, information on who owns them and other health data that we've identified here. If I were to go to the full lineage, you can actually see how and which DBT models are dependent on these exposures. Zooming back into the transactions model, which we've looked at before, as you can see, there's a whole host of exposures here that depend on it. And for example, this Customer 360 test is a dashboard owned by our solutions architect team. And if I wanted to navigate to this directly in Tableau, I could navigate directly through it through here. And again, these exposures give me a map to understand how these models are being used downstream. Now let's talk about model query history, which helps you understand how frequently the models that you're building are being consumed downstream. Now, not only can I go into my performance view in DBT Explorer and look at my most consumed models, but I can also navigate to this convenient lineage lens in the lineage view called consumption query history, where I can look at hotspots and see where things are more frequently queries. I can also zoom in directly to view the number of queries that have occurred. This is a great way to look at where are places where things aren't being as heavily consumed, as well as where places where there are hotspots of consumption. This information is also available per model on the resource page. Now, as far as the last topic in our understanding section of this presentation, let's show you data health tiles and in-app trust signals. Now, in DBT Explorer, you'll find these trust signals sprinkled throughout the application. These exist for sources, models, and exposures. And for exposures, there's a little bit of a special case, which we'll talk about in a minute. Here you can see an example for models. We offer a pretty opinionated view on whether something is healthy. It needs to be fresh and run recently, and we'll aggregate this calculation for you across all your upstream sources that feed into a model. You don't have to do that. It has to have tests configured, and those tests have to be passing. And the data has to have a description, because we believe if data isn't documented, it's not really usable. And you can see all the components that go into our calculation here. Now for exposures, we go one step further. Like I said before, exposures actually map to your downstream dashboards that are connected to your DBT models. So for those exposures, we actually allow you to embed these directly into the application that they represent. So if it's a BI dashboard, you can embed them directly into that dashboard. And to show you that, I'm just going to leave DBT Cloud and navigate to Tableau, where here I have a dashboard that shows me orders, returns, and sales. And on the right-hand side, I can actually see whether the data is fresh and how the quality of the data is. So here I can see data freshness is looking good, but there might be an issue with quality. So if I'm the right person to troubleshoot, I can navigate directly back to DBT Cloud through here and start my investigation. Or maybe I'm a consumer of data and I don't actually have a login to DBT, so I can talk to folks on my data team to help me out. But again, this is all about building trust and meeting users where they are in this process. So we already talked about understanding as a key part of trust, but now let's talk about quality, which is another key dimension. Quality is key for trust, and it requires both proactive and reactive components. First, let's talk about the reactive component. And taking this back to the cooking analogy, this is like something is on fire in the oven and we need to put it out. Developers can use DBT Explorer features to troubleshoot these problems, which betters the quality and continues the foundation of trust. And a few features that we're going to talk about that help with this are column level lineage and lineage lenses. Let's talk about column level lineage first. Column level lineage provides the granularity at the column level, which not only allows users to audit and discover columns that they can use in an analysis, but beyond that, it can be used for root cause and impact analysis to not only reduce the time to resolve data quality issues, but to avoid introducing issues for downstream consumers. And not only does column level lineage help with troubleshooting, but it can also be used for efficiency. You can potentially prune unnecessary columns to reduce costs and data team overhead for things that aren't being used. One bonus on column level lineage is that we actually inherit the column descriptions from the source, which you can see when you're looking at the lineage. Let's talk about lineage lenses, and then we'll go into the demo of both features. Lineage lenses allow you to visualize your DAG from a number of different dimensions, so you can better understand what's going on across your pipeline. The default view is the model layer, which just shows which things are sources versus models versus exposures or metrics. But there's also a few other views that are useful, like the type of materialization, the latest status, the test status. Those are particularly useful for troubleshooting. And we talked about column level evolution and model query history already, but those are also lenses available for you to view. Let's jump into the demo of these features. So in Explorer, I'm going to navigate to the transactions model. And as you can see, I'm going to dig into this column tab here. This gives me the list of my columns. If there's a lot of columns, which some models may have, I can also search for them. But I can not only see information about the column, but the tests as well that are on that column particularly. If I were to dig into this customer SK lens, I can actually see the evolution of this column. So from raw all the way to what happens to it before it reached this model. And this tells me whether something was renamed, whether it was passed through, or whether it was transformed, which is incredibly useful to understand how something flows through the system. And if there was an issue that occurred downstream, it would be really easy for me to use column level lineage to hop back and understand more about where the source of where this came from. Column level lineage is incredibly useful for not only more granular understanding of your models, but also for tracing issues from the source and understanding impact. Let's talk about lineage lenses. If I go to my full lineage view, you can see I have a default lens here, which is the resource type like we talked about. So this tells me if things are models, metrics, sources, etc. You can see the list here. I can also look at this from a different lens, like looking at the materialization type, which tells me how this table is materialized, whether it's a table view, incremental, ephemeral, etc. And this might help me answer some questions when I'm trying to look at the landscape of my project. One of my favorites is the latest status lens, which tells you from the latest runs how the runs are doing. And it looks like everything has been successful here. So there's nothing particular to investigate on my models. Another useful lens for troubleshooting is the test status, which allows you to look at the entirety of your data landscape and understand how your models are performing from the perspective of their tests. As you can see, there are some successes, but there's also some things that look like they're being warned on. So I might want to dig into this to look at it further. And if I wanted to investigate, I can actually navigate directly to the model. And it looks like this is also called out here directly on the resource page. And I can investigate further on the test that is warning. There are a few other lineage lenses that we might want to look at. We already talked about consumption query history, so I'll skip over this one. The last one is the model layer, which is really useful to understand the landscape of your DBT assets, because this tells you in what part of the DAG they are, whether they're staging, intermediate, or in the marts. Beyond some useful information here, these lenses can help your users troubleshoot and have a more bird's eye view on the health of the DBT project. We've talked about understanding and quality and how that helps build a foundation of trust. Now let's talk about the proactive side of quality, which is really about fine-tuning data products. This is where things are doing good. And take this back to the cooking analogy. There's nothing on fire, but we're really trying to improve the recipe. We're trying to go for that Michelin star. And we know that good project hygiene keeps that recipe from burning. The few features we're going to talk about here are project recommendations and model performance. Project recommendations are a feature in Explorer that allow you to have, at a glance, understand some improvements that you can make to your project. These have various different categories, such as documentation is one of them. And these recommendations are powered by DBT Cloud metadata best practices. So you can quickly get an understanding of some things that you can optimize and improve. Next is model performance, which is really about understanding how you can optimize your projects by looking at trends of model execution as an example, which you can look at an overall aggregate, but also across your specific models. And of course, this is not only useful to understand general trends, but also to identify opportunities to reduce infrastructure costs, improve liability, and save your data team time. Let's dig into these features in the product. Here I am on my project recommendations page. And as you can see, I have pretty good coverage here on tests and documentation, but I do see that there's a high priority recommendation for a primary key test that's missing. What's nice about these, they're ordered by priority, so I know which one to tackle first. I'm looking at all rule categories and all severities, but I can also filter these down. DAG structure, documentation, governance, performance, and testing. I can also filter by severity, so maybe I just want to look at things that are high priority and nothing else. in which case I just have this missing primary key test. Project recommendations are a great way to proactively optimize your project. Now let's talk about model performance. Here is some high-level information about your model's performance, which includes things like most executed models, but also your longest model executions. So you could potentially investigate these for potential performance improvements. You'll also be able to look at models that fail frequently. In this case, things are looking pretty good from both a build perspective and a test perspective. I can also look at this at an individual level for a model. So if I were to go into the transaction model, which we've looked at a few times today, I can look at this performance tab and I can see information on its performance trends, including average execution time. And all this information can help me understand if there are certain areas where I want to focus on and potentially optimize in this project to improve infrastructure and save costs. Both recommendations and performance are great ways to be able to proactively optimize your projects. So to recap, we talked about how understanding and quality are key elements to build trust in an organization. And dbt Explorer provides features that help really build and maintain that foundation of trust. We hope you enjoyed the session today. I'm going to pass it back to Leah for next steps. Thank you everyone for watching.
Thanks, Roxy. All right, everyone, I'm back here with some next steps here for you. So first off, let's give it up for our fantastic presenters. Thank you, Alexis and Roxy. Everyone, please continue to ask your questions in the Q&A tab, and we will get them answered for you. We'll stay on and answer those for you. So next steps. So if you're a current dbt Cloud Enterprise customer and are interested in joining the beta for our Power BI Auto Exposures feature, click the orange Talk to an Expert button, and we'll get you connected with your account team to join the beta. Also, if you are not a customer, but you'd like to meet one-on-one with a dbt Cloud expert to discuss your specific use case, there's a much more to dbt Cloud than you've seen today. So please click that orange Talk to an Expert button as well, and we'll get you connected with an expert. And also, I want to make sure to tell y'all about our upcoming 2025 dbt Cloud Launch Showcase. That's our spring product launch, so you don't want to miss that. That's in the Docs tab of Goldcast, and I'll also post it in the chat. And then also, there is a survey that I am launching right now. Please take that 2-minute survey for us. We really appreciate your feedback and want to know how to improve our virtual events for y'all. So please take that survey for us. That was a lot of information at once, so I'm just going to repeat that for you. So if you're a current dbt Cloud Enterprise customer and are interested in joining the beta for our Power BI Auto Exposures feature, click the orange Talk to an Expert button, and we'll get you connected with your account team to join the beta. If you are not a customer, but you'd like to meet one-on-one with a dbt Cloud expert on your specific use case, then please click that orange Talk to an Expert button as well. And then don't miss our upcoming 2025 dbt Cloud Launch Showcase. You can register for that in the Docs tab of Goldcast. I'll also post it in the chat here as well for you. And last but not least, please take that survey launch. We really value your feedback and would love to hear from you. We read each and every single survey that's submitted, so we really appreciate all of your feedback. But thank you all so much for joining us today. We hope you have a wonderful day and that we'll see you at our next dbt Labs virtual event, which that's on the 30th. We have our webinar with SDF, so register for that. That's going to be a really fun, exciting one. And I hope you all have a great day. Okay, see ya.